Welcome to Cozy Love Stories, your home for wholesome, dreamy romances to help you relax and unwind. In today's story, we follow Ella Brooks, who never expected romance to arrive in the form of anonymous love notes tucked into her cafe's tip jar. As the notes continue and 3 likely suspects appear, she's left wondering, who is her secret admirer? So settle in, let the world slow down, and enjoy today's story, Love Notes and Lattes. The bell above the coffee shop door jingled as Ella Brooks pushed it open with her shoulder, arms full of pastries in white paper boxes. The scent of espresso and cinnamon wafted around her like a familiar hug. "You're late," Maya called from behind the counter, refilling a canister of coffee beans. The morning light caught on a few loose curls as she worked with efficient focus. "I brought peace offerings from that new bakery on Maple," Ella replied, nudging the door closed with her foot before placing the boxes onto the counter. Maya peered inside one of the boxes. "You're forgiven," she said with a wink. Ella grinned and reached for an apron hanging on the hook behind the register. The navy blue fabric was soft with use. The logo faded from too many washes. She tied it around her waist with practiced ease, smoothing the fabric flat, as if the apron would behave better that way. "Try one, Maya. I already ate mine on the way over," Ella said, as she gave her hands a quick scrub and turned to survey the cafe. Morning sun streamed through the front windows, casting golden stripes across the tile floor as the espresso machine hummed. Working at the coffee shop wasn't her dream job, but it was a solid option while she figured out what came next. These Danishes might just buy you a free pass for the next 3 times you're late," Maya joked, taking another bite. "Maybe 4. Ella chuckled and wiped her hands on a dish towel, finishing the last of her pre-opening tasks. With a glance at the clock, she made her way to the front window and flipped the sign to open, the wooden placard swinging gently in the glass. As the first few customers trickled in, Ella and Maya slipped into an easy rhythm. Brew, wipe, restock, smile, ask how their regulars slept. After 4 months of working at Rosemary's Cup, it was a well-rehearsed dance for Ella. By late morning, the rush had eased. The regulars were posted in their usual spots, laptops open, newspapers folded just so, mugs cradled between hands. Behind the counter, Ella and Maya worked leisurely, restocking napkins and prepping for the lunch crowd. "Mrs. Carmichael was in rare form this morning," Ella said as she scooped grounds into the drip machine. Maya smirked. "She told me she's teaching her cat how to crochet. Swear he's getting the hang of it." Ella snorted. "Last month it was watercolor painting. I'm just waiting for him to open an Etsy shop." Their laughter bubbled over, drawing a subtle glance from the handsome writer stationed in his usual back corner. Ella caught his eye and mouthed a quick, "Sorry." Maya stifled another round of giggles behind her hands as he returned to his keyboard with a faint smile playing on his lips. "Speaking of oddities," Maya whispered, sliding the tip jar toward Ella. A folded piece of lined notebook paper was tucked between the bills. "Found this in the jar while Mrs. Carmichael was chatting your ear off." Ella blinked. "A note?" "Addressed to you." Ella took the note gently. It was soft at the edges, folded with care. Her name was written on the front. She hesitated for a breath, then opened it, expecting a silly doodle or a half-hearted joke. Instead, she read, "Somehow, the mornings feel less gray when you're around." Ella's brows knitted as she flipped the page over, but there was no indication of who it was from. That's unexpectedly lovely, right? Maya leaned over to peek. Maybe it's from one of the old ladies trying to make your day. Mrs. Carmichael would have signed it from Fluffins and me. Ella laughed again, but her curiosity was piqued. She folded the note neatly and tucked it into the pocket of her apron. Probably nothing, she said aloud. Maya raised a brow. You keep telling yourself that. She leaned on the counter, eyeing Ella with a knowing smirk. So, any news on the job hunt? Ella exhaled through her nose, grabbing a tub of sugar packets. I've applied to about a dozen marketing assistant roles in the last 2 weeks alone. Radio silence. Maya hummed sympathetically. You'd think graduating with honors would count for something. Apparently not if you don't already have 5 years of experience and a glowing letter of recommendation from a Fortune 500 CEO, Ella muttered, lining up sugar jars like tiny soldiers. Hey, there's no shame in taking some time to land. You've only been out of college for 4 months. I know, it's just... Ella paused, her fingers lingering on the edge of the counter. I have so many ideas for branding projects. And I want to help small businesses tell their stories and shape how people see them. I know it's not saving the world, but feels creative, personal, like something I could be proud of. Maya nodded. You will. But in the meantime, you get free coffee and the occasional note from mysterious admirers. Perks, girl. She paused, then snapped her fingers. Actually, that gives me an idea. I should talk to my aunt about letting you do some rebranding for the cafe. It could use a refresh. Let's be real, it looks like Central Perk from Friends had a baby with a rummage sale up in here. Alice snorted. It does have a certain vintage charm. Yeah, and if charm were a couch, ours would still be shedding upholstery from 2003, Maya said, eyeing the floral monstrosity near the window. Seriously, you could pitch her a proposal. It wouldn't be the full-time job you're looking for, but it'd be real marketing work on your resume. I think Aunt Camille would go for it. Hope flickered in Ella's chest. You really think she'd consider it? Girl, she's my aunt. I know how to get her to say yes. Plus, she's always telling me I need to get more involved in the business side of things if I want to take over the shop someday. We're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Ella turned to wipe down a counter with a renewed sense of hope. When her hand brushed the edge of the note in her pocket, her smile came without warning, small and secret, like the note had whispered something only she could hear. It's probably nothing, she told herself again about the note. Regardless, the morning suddenly felt a little brighter. Chapter 2. The next day, another note appeared. It was once again tucked inside the tip jar, folded neatly in half and slipped between a $5 bill and a crumpled receipt. Maya found it first. Miss Brooks, she sing-songed as Ella stocked the pastry case. Your admirer is back. Ella turned, flour-dusted fingers frozen mid-muffin placement. You're joking. Maya handed her the note with all the ceremony of someone delivering a royal decree. Behold, the saga continues. Ella wiped her hands on a towel and took it gently. She unfolded the paper, heart ticking just a bit faster. Your smile makes mornings feel like magic. She felt her cheeks flush. Okay, that's romantic, Maya finished, grinning. You've got a secret admirer mystery on your hands, and I, for one, am fully invested. It's probably just someone trying to be nice. It's probably someone who thinks you're cute. Maya shot her a look. I'm excited. Don't ruin this for me. Ella could only laugh. Over the next few days, the notes kept coming. 1 per morning, never signed, always kind, and always with Ella's name neatly printed on the front. You've got a wonderful knack for cheering up people. You light up a room without even trying. Gradually, the notes grew a little longer, more thoughtful and personal, like whoever was writing them really understood Ella. You have a way of making people feel seen, like the way you talk to Mrs. Carmichael, like she's the most fascinating person in the room. Most folks just nod along or keep their eyes on their phones, but not you. You really listen. You laugh at her stories like they matter, and it's clear you're not humoring her. You're just kind, and that kind of kindness stays with people. Maya joked that she needed a secret admirer of her own. Ella, for her part, tried not to read too much into it, tried to convince herself it was probably a neighbor, someone who remembered her from high school, or a sweet old man trying to pass on some kindness. But every time she pulled another note from the jar, hope that it was something more stirred within her. Then came the one that changed everything. It had been a typical Tuesday morning. Early shift, drizzle outside, the scent of cinnamon rolls hanging heavy in the air. Ella had just handed a cappuccino to one of the regulars when Mrs. Carmichael shuffled in, carrying her floral tote and wrapped in one of her infamous hand-knitted shawls, an impish little smile playing on her face. "You look like someone with a secret," Ella said, smiling as she poured the usual, half decaf and a splash of almond milk. Mrs. Carmichael winked. "Darling, I've got at least 6. Did I tell you Mr. Fluffums has graduated from crocheting to sewing?" Ella chuckled, then leaned on the counter. "Wish I had his skills. I'm supposed to help sew costumes for my little sister's upcoming recital, but I'm not exactly confident with a needle." Mrs. Carmichael waved her off. "You'll be marvelous, and if all else fails, borrow Fluffums. He has an instinct for flair." With a wink and a swirl of her shawl, she disappeared through the door, leaving Ella smiling. The day was so rushed that Ella didn't have time to check the tip jar for a note until after closing. "I heard you're helping with the recital costumes. That's no small thing, giving your time so freely. It's just one more example of how generous you are, even when no one's watching. The world needs more of that." Ella stared at the note for a long time. My secret admirer knows about my little sister's recital. Maya, is this stalkerish now? Maya's brows lifted. Whoever it is probably overheard you talking with Mrs. Carmichael. Or maybe there's someone you already know who heard you were helping out with the recital. Ella nodded thoughtfully. Could be. Either way, Maya continued, this is the big break we've been waiting for. We finally have a clue about who your secret admirer is. Either he was in here when Mrs. Carmichael was around, or he's connected to you and the school somehow. Or he's a stalker, Ella joked. Focus, girl, focus. We're playing detective here. Who was hanging around the cafe when you were talking with Mrs. Carmichael? Maya asked, grabbing a napkin and a pen from beside the register. Before Ella could answer, Maya was already brainstorming. The first suspect has to be Theo, Maya said, scribbling down his name. He's basically a piece of furniture in that back corner, and I know he listens to people's conversations even when he pretends not to. I bet you he uses all those overheard little tidbits for his stories. Ella smirked. A novelist leaving secret notes? Honestly, it's almost too perfect. Maya waggled her eyebrows at Ella. And let's be real, girl, if he is the one, you could do worse. Broody, handsome, and bookish is a strong combo. She tapped her finger to her chin. Now, who else was around today? The friends racked their brains trying to think of likely candidates. But outside of Theo, there weren't any other regulars who were in the cafe while Ella had been talking to Mrs. Carmichael. It had mostly been a random smattering of customers. Let's change tactics, Maya said. Who are the regulars who have some link to your sister's school or could have found out some other way than overhearing your chat with Mrs. Carmichael? They sat for a moment before both exclaimed, Ben. Of course, Ben. Maya added his name to the list. He could have heard about the recital through work, and he always comes in during the breakfast rush. It's the perfect time to drop a note without anyone noticing. Ella considered it. Seems a bit weird the school's PE teacher would have found out about me helping with the pageant's costumes, though. Maya tilted her head. Not if he was paying attention, and let's be honest, Ben's got that big golden retriever energy. Sweet, eager to help, probably writes his mom a nice long card on her birthday. I could see him leaving notes like this. Ella gave a half smile. So that puts us at Theo and Ben. She paused. Actually, there's one more. Maya looked up. Who? Noah. Maya blinked. The handyman? I know he's been here for a couple weeks working on the basement, but he's said about 5 words combined to the two of us the entire time he's been here. He doesn't exactly strike me as a flowery love note type of guy. Ella nodded. But he's been here every day since the notes started showing, just like Theo and Ben. And he's got a connection to the school. His nephew Micah is in my sister's class, so he'll be in the recital too. I mean, I love my niece, but I have no idea what's going on at her school half the time. Would Noah really know all the details about his nephew's recital? Maya held off on writing Noah's name down. Probably, Ella answered. Noah's not just Micah's uncle. He's his guardian. I know because Tilly and Micah are friends. My mom mentioned that he had a pretty rough time before coming to live with Noah, but I don't know much else. Maya's expression shifted. Well, handsome handyman has a good soul. All right, I'm intrigued. Let's add him to the list. Then again, Ella said thoughtfully, he doesn't really seem into me. Plus, you're right, it's hard to imagine a guy like Noah writing secret love notes. Maya shook her head. Just because he doesn't seem like the type doesn't mean he's off the hook. We can't rule out any of these gentlemen without solid evidence. She scribbled Noah's name onto the napkin. All right, girl, we've got our suspects. Now all you need is a game plan. Ella folded the note carefully and tucked it back into her apron. I do have a plan, she said, straightening. Start with the most likely culprit. Maya raised an eyebrow. Which is Theo. He's here all the time, always writing, always watching things. If anyone fits the secret admirer profile, it's him. Maya gave her a sly smile. Or maybe you just want to start with Theo because you already have a thing for him. Ella reached for a clean mug, trying to hide her smile. I'm just being logical. Very scientific of you, Maya said, circling Theo's name with an exaggerated flourish. Operation Broody Writer begins. Chapter 3. By the time her Wednesday shift started, Ella was ready to launch Operation Broody Writer. Step 1. Casual flirting. She spent most of the morning trying and failing to invent reasons to wander toward Theo's usual corner. Straighten the napkin holder, water the plant, inspect the ceiling tiles. Each excuse felt more ridiculous than the last. She was halfway through pretending to organize the sugar packets when her moment arrived. Theo held up his empty mug just as she passed by. Mind if I get a refill? Theo asked. Ella gave what she hoped was a breezy smile. Of course, let me grab you a fresh one. Writing anything good? She asked when she returned with his mug. Theo glanced up, brushing a lock of hair behind his ear. Trying to. I think the caffeine's doing more work than I am. Ella smiled. Then I'm glad we keep the good stuff flowing. His lips quirked, just slightly. Much appreciated, he said. The exchange was simple, almost too simple. But it was a start. Encouraged, Ella stopped by again later to check on him, under the guise of wiping down a nearby table. So, she said casually, I heard you're a novelist. What kind of writing do you do, if you don't mind me asking? Theo leaned back in his chair, stretching. Mysteries, mostly. I like character work, nuance, exploring the things people don't say, he said. Ella nodded. Sounds deep. He tilted his head, watching her. You say that like it's a bad thing. Not at all, she replied, laughing. Just intimidating. I mean, I still read YA for fun. That's fair, he said with a small grin. People are reading less and less, so if YA does it for you, I say keep at it. Throughout the next few days, their exchanges continued, brief but charged. A comment about the weather, a joke about Maya's playlist, a shared chuckle when Mrs. Carmichael offered Theo a hand-knit book sleeve. By Friday morning, Ella had worked herself into a quiet flutter of anticipation. Theo was already seated when she arrived for her mid-morning shift, his notebook open, pen in hand. When she brought him a coffee refill, he looked up with a smile that didn't feel as guarded as before. Big plans after your shift? He asked. Ella shrugged, playing it cool. Not really. Why? He glanced down, then back at her. There's a free concert in the park tonight, and there's a great ice cream stand nearby. Thought maybe you'd want to go with me, he said. Ella felt her heart skip. Yeah, I'd love that. Theo reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Let me get your number in case anything comes up. Ella took the proffered phone with a smile. Sure. After Theo had her contact info, he sent her a quick text so she'd have his number saved. What time should I meet you? She asked. Concert starts at 7, but the ice cream spot usually has a line. Want to meet at the park entrance around 6? Then we'll have plenty of time to talk before the show, Theo said. Sounds perfect, Ella replied. The shift crawled after that. Ella found herself wishing Maya had been scheduled to work, but it was her day off, unfortunately. Instead, she was paired with Toby, who was perfectly nice in a just happy to be here kind of way, but completely unaware of the great romantic mystery unfolding behind the counter. And he definitely didn't know how to discreetly giggle over a well-timed wink from Theo. On the days she worked with Toby, Ella had taken to casually fishing the notes out of the tip jar at closing time, right before she and Toby split tips. It wasn't that she didn't trust him exactly. It was just, well, some things felt too delicate to share. But a note wasn't waiting for her today. Ella took it as a further sign that Theo was the secret admirer. He'd have no need for notes now that they were going on an actual date. After what felt like the longest shift of her life, Ella went home to shower, change, and try on 3 different outfits before settling on a swishy dress and a light cardigan. It was mid-September, one of those rare golden evenings where the warmth still clung to the air like summer wasn't quite ready to let go. The breeze carried the faintest hint of fall, but it was still soft enough to skip a jacket. Ella knew there wouldn't be many nights like this left. It felt like the kind of evening meant for something lovely to begin. By the time she met Theo at the park, the sun was beginning its descent behind the trees, and the scent of waffle cones and fresh grass lingered in the air. He bought them both cones, chocolate chip for her, pistachio for him, and they found a spot near the back of the lawn where the music wouldn't be too loud. Theo laid out a blanket on the grass, and they sat comfortably, enjoying their ice cream and the mellow buzz of the crowd around them. After a few moments of companionable silence, Ella glanced over and asked, So, this book you're working on now, it's not your first one, is it? Theo swallowed another bite of pistachio. Nope. Book number 3. The first did okay, good reviews, modest sales. The second did a lot better, enough to get me a pretty generous advance for this one. I was actually able to quit my job and I'm focused on writing full-time, which is a good thing given the deadline for the book is looming. Ella raised a brow amused. Looming? She said. He gave a wry smile. It's not the ideas that are the problem. It's staying out of my own head long enough to write them down. Ella tilted her head. So you've got a case of writer's block? More like writer's self-sabotage, he admitted. Every time I sit down to write, I end up overthinking every word. Ella nodded. I get that. I think a lot of us are in our heads a lot more than we'd like to admit. Theo gave her a thoughtful look, as if weighing that, then offered a quiet, probably true. She peppered him with more questions, curious about his writing process, his favorite authors, the inspiration behind his characters. He answered them all with the ease of someone used to talking about himself. By the end of the evening, she learned that Theo was 28, had moved to town a year ago in hopes of escaping the noise and pace of the city, which, according to him, was full of distractions that made writing nearly impossible. He was the middle child of 3, sandwiched between a high-achieving older sister and a younger brother who was, in his words, an overconfident hedgehog in human form. He drank his coffee black, wrote best between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., and had once outlined an entire novel on cocktail napkins during a layover in Denver. Ella listened intently and laughed in all the right places. She was genuinely interested, charmed even. But somewhere between learning his favorite writing snack, red licorice, and his least favorite punctuation mark, the ellipsis, it hit her. She hadn't shared a single meaningful thing about herself. Not how her favorite part of college was building brand campaigns for imaginary companies in her marketing classes. Not how she used to spend Saturday mornings helping her dad fix things around the house. Or how delighted she was when she finally became a big sister at 13 when Tilly was born. But it didn't bother her. Not really. They were just getting started. There would be plenty of time to let him in. When she got home later, hyped on sugar and the thrill of possibility, she collapsed into bed with a dreamy sigh. Theo had told her they should meet up again. He liked her. The handsome writer she'd been crushing on for the last 3 months liked her. She snuggled into her pillow. It had to be Theo who'd written her the notes. It just had to be. Chapter 4. Saturday morning started slow. Ella padded into the kitchen in fuzzy socks, finding her mom already at the table, sipping coffee. Well, good morning, stranger, her mom said with a knowing smile. You're looking awfully cheerful for someone who's up early on a Saturday. Ella poured herself a cup and sat down across from her. Do I? She said, trying to play it cool. Her mom raised a brow. I suspect it has something to do with handsome writers and ice cream dates. Ella laughed, a soft blush rising to her cheeks. It was a nice date, that's all. Her mom smiled warmly and relented, letting the conversation drift to other things. The cafe, how Maya was doing, the new branding proposal Ella was putting together. But eventually her mom asked, speaking of branding, how's the job hunt going? Ella sighed. Slow. I don't know. I feel like I need something else to focus on. Some way to feel productive while I'm sending out applications and hearing nothing back. Her mom nodded. That makes sense, honey. It's hard when everything's up in the air. I was actually thinking, Ella began as she stirred her coffee, maybe I should try running a 5K. Just to give myself a goal that isn't career-related. Her mom blinked, then grinned. That's kind of a fun idea. It would be a nice way to branch out, she said. Ella smiled. I figured at the very least I'd have an excuse to buy a new pair of sneakers. Well, there you go, her mom said. A healthy new habit and a little retail therapy built in. What's not to love? Her mother stood to start making brunch, only to discover they were out of milk. I'll run and grab some, Ella offered as she fetched her keys and purse. At the grocery store, Ella placed a gallon of milk into her basket and turned the corner, only to nearly bump into Ben. "You're here early," she said with a smile after righting herself. Ben looked up from reading a label and grinned. "Hey, I just finished a run. Came in for a protein shake and maybe an excuse to procrastinate stretching." Ella laughed. "Well, I guess you earned it. You know, it's funny. I was just telling my mom I'm thinking of trying a 5K. Figured it might be fun." Ben's eyes lit up. "No way. That's how I got into running, and now I'm working my way up to my 3rd marathon. I could help you train if you want. I usually run on Saturday mornings. We could start slow, easy pace, nothing intense," he offered. "Seriously?" she asked. "Yeah, totally. I even have the plan I followed for my first 5K. I'll send it to you," Ben said. Ella hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Okay, why not?" They exchanged numbers and promised to meet up next Saturday. As she left the store, milk in one hand and a small grin tugging at her lips, Ella felt a flutter in her chest, different than the ones Theo inspired in her. It was happier, lighter. The following Monday, Ella walked into the café for her shift and found Maya stocking the pastry case. "Hey girl," Maya said without looking up. "I have updates," Ella called out, and giggled as Maya's head shot up at lightning speed. "Spill it," Maya squealed. Ella filled her in on the ice cream date. She talked about Theo's easy charm, his pistachio obsession, how he worked so hard on his writing career. Maya's brow furrowed as she listened. "Sounds like he gave you his whole biography. Did he even ask about you at all?" Ella looked a bit sheepish. "Well, no, but that's not his fault. I got so excited I just kept asking him more questions. But it's fine, really. We're gonna go on another date soon and there'll be plenty of time for me to share," she said. "If you say so," Maya said, clearly unconvinced. "I know you've gone all googly eyes for Theo, but don't forget there's 2 other potential candidates for your mystery note writer. We shouldn't count them out just yet, right?" Ella's eyes widened. "Oh, right. I forgot to tell you my other news. I ran into Ben at the grocery store, and we're going to start running together. He offered to help me train for a 5K. Maya clapped her hands. "That's what I'm talking about. Get it, girl?" she said. "He's always fumbling around and bashful every time he's in here. Last week he knocked over the napkin dispensers, and I'm sure it was because he was distracted with you nearby. That boy's got it bad." Ella shook her head. "He's sweet, but he doesn't really fit the whole note-writing type, does he?" "Neither does Noah, technically, but he's still on the list," Maya retorted. Ella sighed. "I guess I'll just keep my mind open." Maya pointed at her with the tongs. "Do. And if I had a vote, I'd throw my hat in for Ben. He's cute and sweet, has a good job, loves kids. What more could a girl ask for in a secret admirer?" Ella didn't answer as she turned to grab the coffee filters. Could she really picture herself with Ben? He always gave off strong friend vibes. The kind of guy you called when your car battery died, or when you needed someone to taste test cookie recipes. Reliable, easy to talk to. But then again, maybe that kind of steady warmth was exactly what she needed. Weren't the best romances built on solid friendships? Still, she wasn't sure. Not yet. But she supposed that was the whole point of keeping her mind open. Chapter 5. After her shift, Ella spent some time at the library, applying for jobs and working on her resume, before returning home to find her house buzzing with the warm chaos of dinner time. Her dad was at the stove, flipping grilled cheese sandwiches, a pot of tomato soup bubbling next to the pan. Her mom was chopping up apples for a salad as her sister Tilly perched on a stool at the counter, chattering non-stop about a new school project. Everyone got paired up and assigned a park to study. We're supposed to go observe wildlife and make a diorama by the end of the month, and we have to visit every weekend for 3 weeks. Tilly explained between bites of carrot sticks. Sounds like a big commitment, their dad said, flipping a sandwich. You're gonna need a ride to the park each week, huh? Her mom frowned. I work Saturdays and Sundays this month, and you've still got that quarterly deadline coming up, she said. I can take her, Ella offered, setting down her bag and stepping toward the sink. I've got free time on the weekends, and I could use the excuse to get outside. You sure? Her mom asked, glancing over. Yeah, it's no problem. I'll take care of it, Ella replied. Tilly let out a happy squeal and threw her arms around Ella. You're the best. Ella hugged her back, grinning. You say that now, but wait till you realize you'll be stuck being seen in public with your ancient older sister. Tilly giggled. You're not ancient, just old-ish. Ella gave an exaggerated gasp. Oh, that's it. Come here, you little rascal. She lunged playfully at Tilly, tickling her sides until the younger girl dissolved into squeals and breathless laughter. What, just 'cause you're 9 now, you think you can take me? Ella teased, grinning as Tilly wriggled free and launched a counterattack. Ella collapsed in mock defeat, arms flopping out beside her. Okay, mercy. After dinner, Ella scrubbed dishes while her parents reviewed a folder with Tilly's assignments. Her dad handed a paper over with a smile. This has all the details for Tilly's project, he said. Ella dried her hands and took the sheet. Her eyes skimmed it and paused at the familiar name, Micah Miller, Noah's nephew. Her gaze slid down to the bottom where the contact info was listed. Next to Micah's name was a cell number with the note, for coordination, guardian contact, Noah Miller. Ella hesitated for a moment, then grabbed her phone. The call rang twice before a deep voice picked up. Hello? Hi, Noah. This is Ella Brooks, Tilly's sister. I saw your number on the project sheet. I just wanted to coordinate the kids' schedule for the park visits. A pause. Oh, hey, sorry, I was expecting her mom or dad to call, Noah said. Ella smiled into the phone. Well, they've got their hands full right now, so I'm stepping in as chauffeur. Noah cleared his throat. Right. Yeah, makes sense. Sunday afternoon good for you? He asked. That works, she said. They ironed out a few timing details, and the call ended politely, if a bit awkwardly. Ella didn't give her plans with Noah and the kids much thought that week. Her mind was mostly preoccupied with Theo, as the two of them continued to flirt over the cafe counter. By Friday, they had made plans to go see a movie together. That evening, Ella drove herself to the cute little indie spot on the edge of downtown. Theo had picked a brooding drama about the psychological disintegration of a mid-century architect. Ella was trying her best to look forward to it, but she couldn't help it if she preferred more lighthearted films. She willed herself to be cheerful. She was here for his company more than anything, after all. Next time we go to the movies, I'm sure he'll let me pick what we watch, Ella told herself, as Theo handed her a ticket. There wasn't much time to talk before the preview started, but about 20 minutes into the movie, Theo reached over and took her hand, and all Ella's qualms about the film melted away as she relished the feel of his thumb gently grazing her knuckles. After the credits rolled and they stepped out into the cool night air, Theo launched straight into a breakdown of the film. I thought the whole thing was a metaphor for creative burnout, he said, adjusting the strap of his messenger bag. Like, the building collapsing was obviously his psyche. Brilliant choice to set it in winter, so bleak, so isolating. Ella gave a small nod. Yeah, the cinematography was really nice. And did you catch the callback in the scene with the crumpled blueprint? That was a direct reference to the opening shot. Full circle storytelling, subtle but genius, Theo continued. She tried to keep up, but the more he talked, the more aware she became of how little space there was for her in the conversation. Not that she had a lot to contribute. She hadn't even liked the movie all that much and spent most of it glorifying in the fact that he was holding her hand. So when he asked if she might want to go out for a late-night coffee and discuss the plot more, Ella was relieved to have an excuse not to. "I've actually got an early morning run tomorrow," she said, as they stepped toward the parked cars. "Running on a Saturday morning?" he asked with a crooked smile. "Sounds like my personal nightmare. But hey, probably healthier than sitting at a desk overthinking comma placement." He gave her hand a small squeeze, wished her good night, then headed toward his car. Ella watched him go, struggling to pinpoint how she felt about the night. Chapter 6. Saturday morning arrived, cool and golden, the kind of early autumn morning that hinted at flannel weather but hadn't quite let go of summer. Ella laced up her sneakers with a mix of dread and curiosity. She hadn't been on a real run since PE class in high school, and even then, she was more enthusiastic about stretching than sprinting. Ben was already waiting for her near the trailhead when she arrived, stretching his arms behind his head and looking entirely too chipper for 7:45 in the morning. "You showed up," he said, grinning. "But then again, I didn't peg you as a quitter." "I'm not," Ella replied with a smile. "But apparently I am someone who makes questionable fitness decisions while grocery shopping." He laughed. "Don't worry, we're not doing sprints, just an easy loop to start." And to her surprise, it was fun. They jogged at a conversational pace through a quiet trail that circled a duck pond and cut through a small grove of maple trees beginning to blush with red. Ben told her stories about the PE disasters he witnessed at work, and Ella found herself genuinely laughing. Afterward, they stretched on a patch of grass by the parking lot, sipping water and unwrapping protein bars. "So," Ben said between bites of chocolate peanut butter, "you're officially a runner now. How's it feel?" "Sweaty, but oddly satisfying," she answered. He chuckled. "That's the spirit. Ready for me to send you the training plan I used for my first 5K? He asked. "Yeah, that'd be great," she said. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Ella found herself glancing at him sideways. Ben was sweet, easy to talk to, and funny in a way that put her at ease. Plus, Maya had seemed so sure about him. Still, the butterflies weren't quite there, at least not in the way they fluttered around Theo. "Gotta head out, Ella. I'm supposed to be helping at a pickleball tournament later today," Ben said, standing. He reached down and offered her his hand, helping her to rise to her feet. "Same time next week?" he asked. She hesitated a moment. Was Ben asking her out? Maybe not, but the run had been fun and she did genuinely want to do a 5K. She found herself agreeing with him quickly before she could change her mind. Ben headed off with a wave. Maybe there was something there after all. The next afternoon, Ella pulled into the gravel lot of the park with Tilly chattering non-stop from the back seat. It had been a full morning. Church service, a quick lunch at home, and a last-minute dash to find a missing clipboard and extra granola bars. "Do you think we'll see rabbits?" Tilly asked as she hopped out of the car, adjusting her backpack like it held national secrets. "It's a park, not a petting zoo," Ella said, shutting the car door with her hip. "But who knows? Stranger things have happened." Tilly skipped ahead toward the path, her clipboard tucked under one arm and her ponytail bouncing behind her. The sun was bright for a late September afternoon, but the air was crisp with the promise of autumn. Ella tugged her sweater tighter around herself and followed her sister. They reached the main clearing, where a few wooden benches ringed a small grove of trees and a narrow walking path looped around the perimeter. Micah was already there, standing beside a tall man in a zip-up hoodie and jeans. Ella raised her hand in greeting, and Noah returned the gesture with a small wave, his thermos in the other hand. He looked a little windblown, like he'd spent the morning on a ladder or under a porch. Entirely plausible given his job. His hair stuck up slightly in the back, and there was a faint smear of sawdust on his elbow. "Hey," he said as she approached. "You made it." "We survived Sunday traffic and a supply emergency, so that's a win," she replied with a smile. Micah brightened at the sight of Tilly. "I brought extra markers," he announced. "Awesome," Tilly said, and the two of them immediately veered off toward a patch of tall grass, clipboards in hand, already pointing and whispering like seasoned field biologists. Noah and Ella stood in their wake, watching the kids scurry off. "Looks like they've got it handled," Ella said, her hands in her pockets. Noah nodded. "They make a good team." They walked in silence, following the kids from a distance as they stopped here and there to make observations or explore something interesting. As Tilly crouched in the grass, pointing to something with exaggerated importance, Ella turned to Noah, unable to take the awkward silence any longer. "How's the basement project going at the café?" she asked, tucking her hair behind one ear. Noah glanced over, his expression softening. "Good, actually. Almost done. Just finished replacing the last of the old pipes and patched up some insulation issues. I'll be back this week to finish up the drywall," he said. "Well, bless you for dealing with that mess. I went down there once to grab extra syrups and came back with cobwebs in my ponytail," she said. That earned her a chuckle. "It's definitely not winning any beauty contests, but it'll be a lot more usable once it's done. Your boss has good instincts. Smart to get ahead of all that before the winter freeze," he said. Ella nodded. "That would be my boss's niece Maya, actually. She's been pushing for updates around the cafe." "She seems sharp," Noah said. "She is, and good thing too, because she's probably going to be taking over the cafe someday," Ella said with a grin. Noah cracked a smile. They had looped out of the forested part of the park and arrived back at the fields and a play structure near the parking lot. The kids hovered over a patch of clover and were debating what type of beetle they'd found nestled among the plants. "They're funny together," Ella said. "They are," Noah agreed. "Micah doesn't click with everyone. Tilly's good for him," he said. Ella's brows lifted. "She's a bit of a force of nature." "That's probably why it works," he said. There was a pause, comfortable this time. A soft breeze stirred the grass, and the sunlight filtered through the trees in dappled gold. Noah gestured to a nearby bench, and they settled down to watch the children. Tilly and Micah were apparently satisfied with their discoveries and quickly camped out at a picnic table, papers and craft supplies spread out as they began drawing everything they found for their report. Ella once again eyed Noah curiously. "So, how did you end up being Micah's guardian, if you don't mind me asking?" she said. Noah hesitated for a beat, then answered, "It's fine. My sister-in-law passed away not long after Micah was born. Complications. My brother, he didn't handle it well. Numbed himself out with drugs. Things spiraled for years, and eventually he ended up serving time." Ella looked over, startled. Noah's eyes stayed on the kids as he continued. "Micah didn't have anyone else, so I stepped in." The way he said it, quiet and matter-of-fact, carried more weight than any dramatic telling. "I'm sorry," Ella said softly. He nodded. "Thanks. It's been a lot, but he's a good kid. And worth it." Ella watched him for a moment, struck by how openly he spoke when given the space. She'd always pegged him as the quiet, standoffish type. But maybe that wasn't fair. Maybe he was just reserved, steady. She knew one thing, though. Maya was going to want every last detail of the weekend's events during their Monday shift. Chapter 7. The following week passed in a blur of coffee orders, job applications, training runs, and a calendar that was suddenly a lot fuller than Ella was used to. Midweek, Theo invited her to a book reading downtown. "It's nothing huge," he said, brushing a hand through his hair like the whole thing was slightly beneath him. "Just a short story I'm reading to a small group, but my publisher will be there. She's hoping to stir up some early interest in the next novel," he continued. Ella agreed to go, excited at the chance to see him in his element. The event was held at a cozy independent bookstore tucked between a wine bar and a florist. Theo wore a navy button-down and dark jeans, effortlessly put together as always. When he stepped up to the mic, Ella saw the shift in him, a slight puff of pride in his shoulders, an ease in his voice. He read his story with a confident cadence, the words rolling off his tongue with quiet control. The piece was a moody little mystery set in a weathered coastal town where a series of unsigned love letters had begun appearing in the mailbox of a woman who hadn't received a letter in years. The plot followed a retired librarian trying to uncover the identity of the secret sender, all while uncovering truths about her own past. It was clever, atmospheric, laced with slow burn tension, and it hit a little too close to home. Ella sat up straighter. Secret notes? Unspoken affection? A quiet observer watching from the outskirts? Was this intentional? Her gaze flicked to Theo, who read on with poise, not giving anything away. But the timing felt pointed, the plot too familiar. Had Theo written this as a subtle confession to the tip jar love notes? A literary wink in front of the captive audience? Her cheeks warmed. It was him after all. She'd been right. When the story ended, Ella clapped with the rest of the audience, excited to talk to him about the secret notes. But his publisher swooped in almost immediately, steering Theo toward a group of bookish-looking people near the register. He turned back toward Ella once with a brief, apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry. I thought we'd be able to get pizza after. Rain check?" "Sure," she said, and meant it. But walking out of the bookstore alone felt much less romantic than the ending she'd imagined for her evening. Saturday brought her second run with Ben, and with it, a welcome breath of normalcy after the highs of her discovery about Theo, followed by the sharp low of his absence over the next few days. He'd texted her that he caught a cold, and he'd been opting to work from home in lieu of camping out at the café. Ben waved when he saw her at the park entrance, already mid-stretch. "You came back? I'm impressed," he said. "I figured if I survived last week, I could survive this one," she answered, falling into step beside him. The run was smoother this time. Ella's legs protested less and her breathing felt steadier, which she attributed to her midweek running regimen that Ben had instructed her to follow. Afterward, they grabbed brunch at a nearby diner, settling into a booth with mismatched mugs and bottomless coffee. Ben talked about how the teachers were already planning for the school's spring carnival. Some of his students were campaigning for him to do the dunk tank again. "I swear they train all year just to make that bullseye," he said. "I was soaked within the first 2 minutes last time." Ella laughed, stirring cream into her coffee. "You're a good sport," she said. "They're good kids," Ben answered, his tone softening. He paused, fiddling with the crust of his half-eaten toast. "I actually hated PE when I was their age." Ella looked up, surprised. "Really? You?" she said. "Yep. I was a chubby, slow-footed, couldn't catch a ball to save my life kind of kid, he said with a wry smile. Had this teacher in elementary school who thought it was funny to call me Ben the Boulder because I couldn't climb the rope. Ella's eyes widened. That's awful, Ben shrugged. But there was a flicker of something heavier in his expression. It stuck, and I stuck to the sidelines until middle school. My dad signed me up for wrestling. I was furious at first, but weirdly, I was good at it. That kind of kicked off this whole obsession with sports. Ended up doing soccer and track in high school. He took a sip of water, then glanced at her. When I decided to go into teaching, I knew I wanted to be the kind of PE teacher I wish I had had in school. Someone who didn't care if you're fast or coordinated or fit the mold perfectly. I just want my kids to find something that makes them feel good in their own skin, you know? Ella nodded, something warm settling in her chest. That's actually really sweet. Ben gave a shy smile. Ella found herself smiling back. He really was sweet. By Sunday, Ella was exhausted. She'd considered asking her dad to bail her out as Tilly's chauffeur for the day, but he got an urgent call during lunch and was heading into the office. He needed to fix a report the whole team would be relying on to finish their quarterly analysis. So Ella forced herself to rally, though it would have been easier if it was Theo she was gearing up to see, instead of quiet, soft-spoken Noah. Tilly, of course, was bursting with energy, practically vibrating in her seat on the drive over. The moment they parked, she bounded out of the car and down the path toward where they'd met Noah and Micah the week prior. Ella followed behind her, sipping coffee from a travel mug and trying to pretend she didn't feel like a half-deflated balloon. The trail curved gently through golden trees and fallen leaves, and after a few minutes, Ella had to admit the fresh air was helping. By the time she reached the clearing, Tilly was already talking to Micah at 1,000 words a minute. Noah sat on a nearby bench and lifted a hand in greeting. Seeming to sense her exhaustion, Noah kept the conversation minimal as they walked the forested loop. After many stops, giggles, and excited exclamations of, "Look at this!" the group once again arrived near the benches by the parking lot. Tilly and Micah hurried off to a picnic table and got to work sketching leaves, labeling bugs, and whispering about who had seen the weirdest mushroom. Noah and Ella, for their part, settled onto the same bench from the prior week, sipping coffee from their respective thermoses. Micah came prepared, Ella commented, glancing toward the explosion of art supplies on the table. He takes his fieldwork seriously, Noah replied. Or maybe he just really likes colored pencils, he added. They sat in a comfortable silence for a moment, the breeze rustling through the trees around them. How do you like working at the coffee shop? He asked after a minute. It's okay for now, Ella shrugged. It's kind of a placeholder while I look for something more in my field. What's your field? He asked. Marketing, she said. Or, well, I guess I should say branding and communications. I love the storytelling side of it, helping businesses find their voice, build a vibe. I had this professor who said, branding is just making people feel something consistently, and that really stuck with me. Noah nodded thoughtfully, his gaze still on the kids. That makes sense. People underestimate how much little things like colors, words, or tone can change how something feels. Ella blinked, a little surprised. Exactly. I mean, I'm still figuring it out, obviously, but that's the dream, to help people tell their stories well. He turned towards her then, quiet but sincere. What kind of place do you want to work for? Your ideal job, I mean. It wasn't a big question, not really, but it caught her off guard. Noah wasn't asking her about it in a polite, small talk kind of way. He really seemed interested. She found herself smiling. Honestly, a small local brand with a lot of heart. Something I could help grow from the ground up. I don't care about going viral or seeing my name in lights. I just want to do good work. Noah nodded slowly, like he was tucking the answer away somewhere important. You ever think about starting your own place? Like your own agency? He asked. Ella blinked. Yeah, all the time actually. I even have this folder on my laptop called Placeholder that's full of color palettes, logo ideas, and taglines I've come up with over the years, she said. Noah smiled. That doesn't sound like a placeholder. That sounds like a solid start on your future dreams. Ella looked down at her travel mug, cheeks warming slightly. No one had ever framed it that way before. He was, actually, quite easy to talk to, and she wondered why he'd never tried to make conversation in the cafe. Not that it mattered anymore. He'd finished his project earlier that week. How's life without the cafe basement? Ella asked, nudging him lightly. Noah smirked. Less musty. They talked about the park, about Micah and Tilly, and about the bird feeder that had mysteriously appeared in his backyard last week. He was convinced Micah was secretly trying to befriend squirrels. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Ella found herself noticing small details about him. The way Noah's eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, the way his voice had a calmness that felt grounding, his quiet confidence, his surprising thoughtfulness. She caught herself watching him a beat too long, just as her phone buzzed in her lap. She glanced down. Theo. Ella hesitated for half a second, then looked at Noah. He'd noticed the name, his eyes flickering briefly to the screen before he politely turned back toward the kids. Excuse me, she said, rising from the bench. I should take this. She stepped away toward a quiet patch of shade under one of the tall oaks. Hi, she said, as she answered the phone, trying to keep her voice casual. Sorry to call you out of the blue, Theo replied. I've just been thinking about the other night. Ella's stomach fluttered. Oh? He went on. Yeah, I realized we barely got to talk at the reading, and now that I think about it, even the movie night wasn't great for actual conversation. That admission took her slightly off guard, but she appreciated that he'd noticed the imbalance in their conversations. I'd really like a do-over, he continued. Something slower. Just us. There's this restaurant over on Hawthorne, Seasons. Have you heard of it? Ella blinked. Seasons. It was the kind of place people posted about for anniversaries and once-in-a-lifetime date nights. Yeah, she said, flustered. I've heard of it. How about Friday night? He asked. She smiled despite herself. I'd love that. Great, he said, warm and confident. I'll make the reservation. They said their goodbyes, and Ella stood still for a moment, heart skittering. Seasons with Theo. That felt significant. She turned and made her way back to the bench where Noah still sat, his gaze on the kids, who were now arguing about whether their stick figure squirrel needed a scarf. Ella sat down, trying to settle back into the moment. But now, all she could think about was the look on Noah's face before she walked away, the way his eyes had dropped when he saw Theo's name on her screen. She folded her hands in her lap and stared straight ahead. She shouldn't be noticing the curve of his smile or the way his eyes had lingered on her when he asked about her dreams. And she definitely shouldn't be indulging thoughts of how handsome he was. She had a burgeoning thing with Theo and a dinner date at the most romantic restaurant in town. That's what she should be thinking about, not Noah. Chapter 8. The evening air was crisp, and Ella stood outside Seasons, smoothing the front of her dress and willing her nerves to settle. The Windows restaurants glowed warmly behind her, and the scent of rosemary and melted butter drifted through the doors each time they opened. Theo, dressed in a sleek charcoal blazer, his usual tousled hair slightly tamed for the occasion, gave her a once-over and smiled. "Wow, you look beautiful," he said, leaning in to press a brief kiss to her cheek. Couldn't even wait till the end of the date for that. Ella blushed, a mix of surprise and delight fluttering in her chest. "You clean up well yourself?" Inside, the restaurant was intimate and dimly lit, all amber glow and soft jazz, with flickering candles on each table. Theo had clearly gone all out. He'd reserved a spot near the window, and a bottle of wine was already waiting in a bucket of ice. "Fancy," she said, with a playful nudge. "What can I say?" he replied, pulling out her chair. "I like to do things right." At first, Ella was swept up in the charm of it all. The low hum of conversation around them, the cozy clink of glasses. Theo told her about some influential editors he met at the reading last week, and how they were optimistic about his next manuscript. But as the courses arrived, so did a slow shift in her mood. Theo waved off the server brusquely when there was a mix-up with his appetizer order. The server insisted she'd be back with a corrected dish and offered a free dessert for the trouble. He answered her with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. "No worries," he said, too casually. "It happens when people aren't fully paying attention." Ella's smile faltered. Once the food arrived, he launched into a story about his college writing group, barely pausing between bites. Every thread of conversation led back to him. His book, his career, his clever observations about society. And Ella realized this wasn't new. He'd done the same thing during their first date, and at the movies and during the book reading. She'd just been too smitten to notice. Were the sweet words he'd written to her in the notes just empty messages? Perhaps if she brought up her sister's recital, he might confess to leaving the notes in the tip jar. "My little sister's recital is coming up next weekend," she said, lifting her fork. "She'll have a clarinet solo." Theo rolled his eyes slightly as he cut into his steak. "Ugh, those things are torture. I went to my niece's piano recital last year. Nearly lost the will to live. Screeching kids and folding chairs? No, thank you." Ella blinked. "Well, I think all the kids getting excited to perform is actually kind of sweet, even if the performances can be lacking," he shrugged. "Still, not exactly how I'd want to spend a weekend." The words sat heavy between them, and just like that, a quiet clarity settled into her chest. He hadn't written the notes. He couldn't have. Whoever had written them noticed the small things about her. How much she cared, how much she listened. The person who wrote the notes certainly wouldn't belittle her sister's recital. Theo didn't see her. Not really. He saw someone to impress, someone to entertain, and maybe, up until now, she'd been okay with that. Maybe she'd mistaken the intensity of his charm for connection. But now, sitting across from him under candlelight, she felt a pang of something that surprised her. Disappointment, not just in him, but in herself, for ignoring the signs. When he pulled up to her house later and leaned in to kiss her goodnight, she turned slightly, offering only her cheek. "Everything okay?" he asked, clearly confused. I'm just not feeling great," she said quickly. "Probably something I ate." He looked skeptical, but nodded. "Well, rest up." "Thanks again for dinner," she said. already reaching for the door handle. Inside, she leaned against the door and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The butterflies were gone. Chapter 9. Saturday morning dawned crisp and cool, and all Ella wanted to do was stay in bed. She had tossed and turned the night before, unable to sleep after her disastrous date with Theo. She just managed to catch a brief snooze before her alarm went off, signaling it was time to go meet Ben for a run. She arrived at the trailhead late, but Ben was unfazed and chipper as ever. "You ready to crush this?" he asked with a grin. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Ella said, adjusting her ponytail. "I'm here, and that's the victory." Their run was surprisingly comfortable. Ella focused on the steady rhythm of their steps on the gravel path, waving hello to the occasional dog walker. Ben kept pace with her the whole way, cracking jokes and offering just enough encouragement to make her forget she'd considered sleeping in. Afterward, they sat on a patch of grass near the parking lot, stretching and sipping water. A familiar ease settled between them, like they'd been doing this for years instead of just a few weeks. "I'm gonna have to start picking up the pace soon," Ben said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've got a half marathon in 3 weeks, so next Saturday I'll probably run a longer route. We're gonna have to put our weekend running sessions on pause for a bit." "Oh," Ella said, surprised by the small pinch of disappointment in her chest. "But I'll send you the schedule," he added quickly. "And seriously, text me if you need tips. I'm not abandoning you. Coach Ben is just leveling up." Ella smiled. "Thanks, Coach." They stood and brushed the leaves off their legs. Ben shifted his weight, suddenly looking a little more unsure of himself. "You going to your sister's recital next week?" he asked, eyes scanning the treetops like they held the answer. "Yeah, wouldn't miss it," she said. I'll probably see you there then," Ben replied. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something more, but then his expression shifted, the easy confidence draining away in real time. His foot caught awkwardly on the edge of the sidewalk and he stumbled, recovering just in time to laugh it off. "Well, I'd better get moving," he said, already taking a few backward steps. "Need to hydrate, shower, all that good stuff." "Okay," Ella said, watching him go. She tilted her head. Maybe Maya had been right all along. He definitely looked like a guy about to ask her on a date and then chickening out. The next afternoon, Ella was putting on her sneakers to take Tilly to the park when her phone buzzed with a new message from Ben. "Hey, any chance you're free Tuesday after work? I was trying to tell you something yesterday, but completely failed. Would love to talk in person." Ella stared at the screen, wondering what it could be. She typed back quickly, "Sure, happy hour." But as soon as she pressed send, it hit her. The recital. That's what they'd been talking about when Ben got weird. And that was the subject of the last note in the jar, the one that praised her for helping out with costumes and being generous with her time. Her stomach flipped. It had to be Ben. It made sense now. He worked at the school, he'd know about the recital. He always came in during the morning rush when it was easy to slip something in the jar unnoticed. And he was sweet and thoughtful and, Ella sighed at the sad realization, and she didn't like him like that. Not in the butterflies, heart-racing, can't-stop-smiling kind of way. She liked him as a friend, a good one. But she'd been holding on to this secret admirer mystery like it was a storybook. She longed for a romantic, cinematic ending. Was the note writer really Ben? She was a little crushed to realize he didn't make her heart skip at all. Her phone buzzed again. Ben had agreed to happy hour. "Oh, great, just great," Ella muttered to herself. She was going to have to break his heart. On the drive to the park after her realization, Ella mentally rehearsed all the kind but firm ways she could let someone down gently. She wished Maya were here to help her craft the perfect script, but Maya was off sipping fancy drinks in Cancun with her sister and wouldn't be back until Thursday. As soon as they arrived, Tilly and Micah ran off with their notebooks, disappearing down the trail. Noah greeted her with a small nod and a faint smile, and when they finished their normal loop, he motioned toward the usual bench. He looked relaxed today. His hoodie sleeves were pushed up, and he had his thermos in hand. They made small talk for a while, but Ella couldn't focus on the conversation. Her thoughts were too scattered. Until finally she just blurted out, "How do you let a guy down softly when you can tell he likes you, but you really don't feel the same way?" Noah blinked, taken off guard. His shoulders stiffened slightly, but he recovered with a thoughtful nod. "Well," he said after a moment, "I guess you just be honest. Kind, but clear. But don't be cruel either. Just say what you need to say." Ella turned her face toward the sun and blew out a breath. "Yeah, that sounds right." But even as she said it, something inside her sagged. Theo had seemed so promising. He was so polished and poetic, but the more she got to know him, the more hollow it all felt, like he was reciting lines from a script instead of building something real with her. And now Ben, sweet, loyal, goofy Ben. If he really was the one behind the notes, it should have thrilled her, but it didn't. There were no sparks, no stirrings in her chest, just a quiet, sinking guilt that someone so kind might be hoping for something she couldn't give back. Her eyes flicked toward Noah. He hadn't made any grand gestures. He probably hadn't even realized she was spiraling about any of this. And yet, he was kind, steady, thoughtful in the way that actually mattered, not performative or poetic, just present. When he spoke, he didn't fill every silence with noise. He gave her space, but never made her feel invisible. She found herself wishing, unexpectedly, irrationally, that it had been him all along. There was no drama with Noah, no knots in her stomach or guessing games, just quiet moments and steady warmth. Ella wondered if maybe she'd been looking in the wrong direction the whole time. Her thoughts whirled the rest of their time in the park, and it wasn't until she was driving home that she realized how quiet Noah had gone. His gaze was fixed on the kids after their conversation, expression unreadable, Ella's brows furrowed at the memory. He looked almost sad. Chapter 10. By Monday morning, Ella had a pit in her stomach that no amount of tea could fix. She braced herself for the moment Ben would walk through the cafe doors, like he did every weekday between 7:10 and 7:15, always with that warm smile and some goofy comment about needing caffeine to herd wild children. But the clock crept past 7:20, then 7:30. No Ben. She tried not to read into it. Maybe he'd stopped at the chain place by the gym instead. But then Tuesday came, and again, no Ben. Ella spent most of the day trying to breathe through her nerves, all while her brain kept cycling through every possible way the evening might implode. She'd rehearsed so many ways to let someone down gently that her inner monologue was beginning to sound like a dating advice column. Every version felt either too vague, too harsh, or too self-deprecating. And worse, a traitorous part of her imagined every terrible outcome, Ben bursting into tears, or launching into a grand romantic speech, or leaving the table in dramatic silence. She knew better. Ben was a grown man, emotionally grounded and fully capable of handling a little disappointment. Still, her anxiety wouldn't let her off the hook. By the time she slid into the booth for happy hour, her palms were clammy, and her heart wouldn't stop tapping out a nervous rhythm. Ben arrived a few minutes later, looking casual and completely at ease in a zip-up hoodie and jeans. He slid into the seat across from her with a grin. "Hey, thanks for meeting up." "Of course," Ella said, managing a smile. They ordered some fries and beers and made small talk. All the while, Ella's toes were curling from the tension, wishing he'd just come out and say something. When their drinks arrived, she decided to casually spin the conversation towards the coffee shop. Maybe that would prompt a confession about leaving notes in the tip jar. "You had me worried, you know. You've been skipping your usual coffee visits these past 2 days. Ben winced and spilled some of his beer. "Yeah, I haven't really had a reason to swing by this week." "Since when do you need a reason for coffee?" He gave a small, sheepish smile. "I mean, I like the coffee, sure, but if I'm being honest, that's not the main reason I go." She raised an eyebrow, confused. "What do you mean?" He set his drink down carefully as his cheeks turned ruddy. He took a deep breath. "I mostly go in to see Maya." Ella blinked. "Maya?" Ben nodded, looking down at the condensation on his glass. "Yeah, I've had a thing for her for a while now, but she's been on vacation, so..." He shrugged. "Figured I'd spare my wallet for a bit and..." "Wait, what?" Ella nearly shrieked as his words finally processed. Ben let out a breathy laugh. "Yeah, I know. It's not exactly like I've been putting on any smooth moves to try and charm her. The problem is every time she looks at me, I turn into a klutzy disaster." Ella stared at him, wide-eyed, recalling all the times he'd knocked over the half and half or the napkin holders. A smile broke out across her face as she remembered the time he missed his chair while trying to sit down, just as Maya had called out his name when his coffee order was ready. "You like Maya," he nodded, eyes flicking down to the table. "I've been trying to work up the nerve to ask her out, but every time I get close, I turn into the human version of a tripping hazard. So I thought maybe you could lend me a hand. Do you think I'd even have a shot?" An amused, conspiratorial look crossed her face. She leaned in. "You and Maya would be perfect." Ben looked up, startled. "Wait, really?" "Yes," she laughed. "You're both sweet, hilarious, and completely oblivious to how charming you are. And she's totally joked about wanting her own secret admirer before. And all the while, here you've been, secretly admiring her this whole time. It's like fate." He smiled. "So you'll help me?" "Absolutely," Alice said, leaning back in her booth. "This is now my favorite project." Later, as she drove home, a strange quiet settled over her thoughts, relief in part that Ben wasn't her secret admirer. There was no dramatic heartbreak, no awkward letdown, just a budding match between Ben and Maya that honestly made her giddy. But then she remembered the recital. Her thoughts jumped back to that last note, the one she'd been so sure was Ben's, but it wasn't, which meant it was Noah. Noah had been around all those weeks, fixing the basement, watching in that quiet, observant way of his. And suddenly, all the feelings she'd been trying so hard to ignore came rushing forward. She'd spent weeks gently nudging her thoughts away from him, telling herself that Theo was the one pursuing her, that Theo made more sense. He was charming, creative, magnetic, all the things she thought romance was supposed to look like. But while her dates with Theo left her feeling unsure and unseen, her moments with Noah had been something else entirely. Balanced, easy, real. Their connection hadn't come with grand gestures. It had grown quietly, like sunlight streaming over the horizon, in the steady pace of conversation, The thoughtful questions he asked, those moments in the park when he looked at her, fully looked at her, with that quiet, gentle smile, the way he talked about Micah with such care and quiet devotion, had carved a place in her heart long before she realized it. She couldn't help but admit that he was handsome, and not just in the obvious, polished way Theo was. Noah's appeal lived in the crinkle of his eyes when he laughed, in the warm rasp of his voice when he said her name, in the way he listened without trying to fix or impress. Ella exhaled, the realization soft and terrifying all at once. It had been Noah all along, but now she had no real excuse to see him. Their Sunday park meetups had ended, the basement was fixed, there were no more natural overlaps. She had his number. Was she brave enough to text him? Would he be mortified at being discovered? But then, like a light bulb flickering on in her mind, she had an idea. Maybe it was time for her to do some secret admiring of her own. Chapter 11. The school auditorium was already buzzing when Ella arrived. The chatter of proud parents and the crinkle of programs filled the air. She scanned the room, trying to spot her parents and Tilly. But before she could, a familiar voice called her name. She turned to see Ben waving, a cheerful grin on his face. "Hey, stranger," he said as she made her way over. "Didn't expect to see you solo." "I was trying to finish a job application," Ella said with a smile. "My parents brought Tilly ahead of me." Ben nodded. "Well, it's good to see you again." "Thanks," she said warmly. "I better go and find my parents. I promised Tilly I'd wave like a maniac from the audience." They parted with a friendly goodbye, and a few moments later, Ella spotted her mom near the middle of the room, waving her down. She slipped into the row beside her dad just as the lights began to dim. Ella's eyes wandered as the MC took the stage. A few rows ahead, and slightly to the left, she spotted him. Noah. He sat quietly, posture straight, hands clasped, and eyes fixed on the stage. The first act were the kindergartners, wearing silly costumes that Ella had helped make. They danced to a cute song about a caterpillar who didn't know he'd turned into a butterfly, drawing chuckles and ahs from the audience. Next came the first graders, followed by the second and third graders, until finally it was Tilly's class. Ella leaned forward with anticipation as the fourth graders shuffled on stage in their dress shirts and bow ties. They began their first song, a sweet, slightly off-key rendition of "What a Wonderful World." Then came a second piece, and Tilly stepped forward for a small clarinet solo. It was just a few lines, but she played them with such earnestness that Ella felt a lump rise in her throat. When it ended, she clapped louder than anyone. As the recital moved on to the next class's performance, Ella found her attention drifting. She tried to focus on the music, but her eyes kept straying toward Noah. He wasn't like Theo. He didn't walk into rooms with a presence that drew people in, but there was something else about him, something quiet and grounding. Theo had dazzled her with charm and mystery, with clever lines and moody smiles. But Noah had simply been kind, and he had looked at her like what she said mattered. Ella's mind tugged her back through their Sundays at the park, the way Noah smiled when Micah said something funny, the way he actually listened when she talked about her job search, how thoughtful his questions had been, how safe she'd felt sitting beside him on that bench, like she didn't have to perform. At intermission, families stood to stretch and chatter while kids zigzagged through the aisles. Ella turned to her mom. "What do you think about taking Tilly and Micah out for ice cream after this?" Her mom's eyes lit up. That's a great idea. We've got time before bedtime. And if it's okay with Noah, Ella added casually, scanning the room. As luck would have it, he was making his way through the crowd. There he is, her mom said brightly and waved him over. Noah approached, a little unsure, and smiled politely. Hi, Mrs. Brooks. We were thinking of taking the kids out for ice cream after the show, her mom said. Would that be all right with you? We'll bring Noah back to your place after. Noah glanced toward the empty stage for a bit, then answered, I think he'd be thrilled. Perfect, Ella said, heart-thudding. I'll catch up with you guys at home. I need to head out after the show. Her mom gave her a curious look. You're not coming to ice cream? Rain check, Ella said lightly. Long week, you know. As her mom turned to discuss logistics with Noah, Ella quietly slipped away down the side hallway. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled some paper from her bag, heart pounding. She scribbled quickly, the words coming in a rush. Your words of encouragement all those weeks ago meant more to me than I can say. If it was you, and I hope it was, meet me at our bench at the park after the recital. She stared at the paper for a beat, then folded it in half and hurried outside into the parking lot. The fall air was cool but not cold as she searched the rows of cars until she found Noah's truck. She tucked the note under the windshield wiper. As she made her way back inside, it crossed her mind that she'd been wrong about her secret admirer twice before. Please let me be right, or this is about to be the most awkward romantic gesture of all time. Still, she couldn't stop smiling. Back at her seat, her mom gave her a puzzled look but didn't say anything. Ella sat quietly as the lights dimmed again. The second act started with the kindergartners waltzing out for their next performance. Her hands were warm in her lap. Her thoughts warmer still. Chapter 12. The final note of the closing number echoed through the auditorium, followed by a round of proud, enthusiastic applause. Ella stood quickly and made her way toward the stage exit, weaving through the crowd until she spotted her little sister bouncing on her heels near the wings. Tilly, she called out, arms open. Tilly launched herself into Ella's hug, her clarinet case bumping awkwardly between them. You were amazing, Ella whispered. That solo? I'm still recovering. Tilly grinned, cheeks flushed. Really? I didn't squeak? She said. Not even once. You nailed it, Ella answered. Their dad joined them then, ruffling Tilly's hair. You were a star, kiddo. And guess what? We've got a surprise. Tilly's eyes lit up. What is it? We're going out for ice cream, their dad said, nodding toward the door. Micah's coming too. Yes, let's go find him, Tilly squealed. She took off down the hallway, clarinet case bumping behind her. Their parents laughed, trailing after her. Ella waited until they had turned the corner before slipping out the side entrance. A few stars dotted the velvet sky, and the street lamps glowed golden along the sidewalk as she drove to the nearby park. The bench was exactly as she remembered it. Simple, a little weathered, but now full of promise of what might come. She sat, fidgeting with the hem of her coat, heart pounding. 5 minutes passed, then another. Maybe he didn't see the note. She had just begun to entertain the idea that she might be completely wrong, wildly, embarrassingly wrong, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Noah. He looked unsure, one hand tucked into his jacket pocket, the other brushing nervously through his hair. You came, she said softly. I found the note after the recital. He offered the smallest of smiles. I almost thought it wasn't for me. It was definitely for you, Ella said. Noah walked toward the bench and sat, the soft glow of the lamplight catching the edges of his profile, the quiet of the park wrapped around them, leaves rustling gently overhead. I wasn't sure what to do at first, he said finally, his voice low. I found your note and just stood there for a minute. I guess I was kind of in shock. Ella turned slightly toward him, listening. I didn't expect it, he continued, rubbing the back of his neck. And honestly, I felt a little embarrassed. Embarrassed? She echoed, surprised. He gave a sheepish smile. Yeah, I thought I'd done a decent job of keeping things to myself. Guess not. I know those notes were probably a little grade school. I'm not great at saying what I feel out loud. I thought maybe if I wrote it down, it'd come out right. Her heart tugged. I was going to tell you eventually, he continued, but I overheard some of your call with Theo and realized you were probably seeing him. And when you mentioned someone liking you and needing to let them down easy, I thought you'd figured me out and were trying to let me off the hook gently. Ella shook her head, a breath of disbelief escaping her lips. Noah, I did go on a few dates with Theo, but it turns out he's not exactly who I thought he was. He looked over, brow raised slightly. She gave a half smile. All he does is talk about himself, and it didn't take all that long to figure out he didn't write the notes. Noah blinked. Then, now it's my turn to be embarrassed. I thought my secret admirer was Ben, she admitted with a wince. And when I told you I was trying to let someone down easy, that's who I meant. He blinked again, this time more surprised. Ben? Yeah, but plot twist. Ben likes Maya, she said. Noah let out a soft laugh. That, actually makes a lot of sense. Ella nodded, grinning. It does, doesn't it? They sat in the quiet again, and this time it felt lighter. I missed seeing you this past week, Ella said quietly. The cafe felt different without you fixing something downstairs. And I didn't have our time in the park to look forward to. Noah glanced over, his eyes warm. Well, I could start showing up at the cafe more. Maybe even invent something to fix. Ella laughed. I wouldn't complain. He hesitated, then reached for her hand. She took it. Truth is, she said, those notes meant more to me than I can explain. They showed up at a time when I was feeling kind of lost. And knowing that someone saw me, that someone cared, it meant everything. Noah's thumb brushed gently over her knuckles. Of course I saw you, he said. How could I not? She turned to him then, heart thudding. The world around them seemed to hush for just a moment, just for them. And when he leaned in, she met him halfway. The kiss was soft and warm and full of every word they hadn't yet said. When they pulled apart, Noah smiled. So, now what? Ella leaned her head on his shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her lips. Now, she said, we see where this new beginning takes us. And beneath the quiet stars, on a bench where something simple had become something beautiful, they did exactly that. Thank you so much to everyone who stayed till the end. There's no epilogue on this story because next week's video is going to contain quite a few cameos from Ella and Noah. And as you might have guessed from the setup of this story, Ben is finally going to get his moment in the spotlight as he tries to win Maya's heart. Now, I know this story isn't the first one that I've posted on my channel, but it is the first one that I've recorded, and I've just had so much fun with this process, and I hope that really came through in the recording. I know there's probably lots of room for improvement, and I'm excited to figure out where I can grow and improve. So if you have any notes or thoughts or constructive feedback, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the YouTube algorithm with pushing this story to other like-minded folks who might enjoy the content. And if you'd like to hear more cozy love stories, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed writing it. Thanks again to everyone who listened, and I hope you have a great day. Stay cozy, friends. Bye!